Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
You say, go sit over here in the washing machine or in the basin for a little bit while we try to figure out the source of the stain and whether you were actually the one who poured or not. Now, this is a question that we're asking in public service, that if there is a question, if there is an investigation, should you step aside? But further than that, if you have been impeached, I remember the Chief Justice declaring herself, not just declaring herself, but perhaps declaring what the law said in terms of what should actually happen when somebody has been impeached. And I believe the words that she used, I think we have that clip here, even at Spice. And she said, if you're impeached, you're impeached. That means you cannot go, you cannot touch anything. If you're impeached, and you go home. That's essentially what she said. But then the other side, which makes the so clear law maybe not so clear, is that until you have exhausted all avenues of appeal, then you are able to operate within the same space. Which is which? Now, we know that Justice Lynn Gogi has also could have set precedent some years ago when she dealt with the cases of former Governor Ferdinand Waititu, as well as for former Governor Mike Sonko, whereby in this space where we are operating, where there is work, and that there's question as to your conduct, there's a court case as to the state preferring charges against you of things like corruption and mismanagement of funds, etc., the EACC in tow as well, then remove yourself from that space. I believe the latest happened with Governor of Trans-Nzoia County, George Natembeya, when he was asked to stay away from his office for 60 days while this investigation took place. Surely he was exonerated of those charges later. But the question is, should this be the practice? Should you actually say, okay, first of all, we don't need you in this thing in the moment. That there are questions as to conduct, there are questions as to what may have happened while you were sitting there. And with you there, you pose possible distraction. So because of that, we're going to ask you to sit aside. Could this have been what Lynn Gogi envisioned when she was then interpreting and said that something then needs to be done? Does it make sense when you ask, just cool your heels there for a minute while we figure out what was going on here?
It does make sense, because then if you are at a position of a governor where you're handling resources of a county and there are questions on how you've handled these resources, the most sensible thing for you to do is to stay away from control of these resources as investigations continue. Same would apply within police. You are the one who's giving orders to your juniors. When investigations are there against you, knowing very well that you order your juniors and you are at that high position, the best thing to do, or the most sensible thing to do, is for you to stay away from control and issuing these orders to your juniors so that investigations can again be conducted by the very juniors, but with you outside, not giving these orders, right? So it would happen to every other institution, because when there is a speck in your eye, you remove it, you don't look at a log. That's exactly what other courts have pronounced themselves. That in the meantime, as we go through investigations or we prosecute this matter, stay away from that office so that justice can be seen to be delivered. But is that the case? Is that where we find ourselves today?
Well, obviously it's not. And I believe that it was here in this country where somebody said, I would rather die than resign. But what does that say to me is that the threshold for integrity has actually been so lowered that it doesn't really matter. I mean, we have people who've been convicted. Now, hear me out. We had people for whom charges were brought. They went to court. There was a trial. They were convicted and sentenced and fined.
And spent time in jail.
Yes.
We're not talking about remand prison, jail.
No, but still prison.
Yeah.
Still came back, vied, and won.
And were cleared by all the agencies.
Were cleared by the agencies to run in this election.
Why? Because apparently the Constitution allows you room to appeal.
Exhaust all avenues of appeal.
Yes.
Right.
Yet, the courts have pronounced themselves that you are guilty as charged.
So, because the law is very clear.
I have a question. When you appeal, does the judgment get overrode? That one?
Okay, just hold on. Because
Lawyer atatuambia.
the law is very clear.
Yeah.
And so the people who can clear up the law,
Lawyers.
they're here. And our Justice Thursday conversation is around all of these things. Nuruddin Kagai is an advocate of the High Court, and he's here with us this morning. Good morning, Wakili.
Good morning.
How are you?
Sorry I'm late. Nairobi is not working. We need a change of governance.
Oh, here we go. I said lawyer, not a politician.
Wasema ngumi si mbwekze.
They go together. I just wear different hats depending on the day.
Depending on the day. So this is a day where you can wear the double hat.
Yes.
Because this conversation that we're having today is duplicitous in nature because of the fact that these things often bleed one into the other.
Yes.
But you know what we'll do first?
Yeah.
You will interpret a proverb for us before we
Yeah.
get into this conversation.
Yeah.
Today we're in Madagascar.
All right.
You know King Julian?
Yes.
I like to move it.
Yes.
If you want to see King Julian, you can only see him in Madagascar. 90% of the wildlife only exists in that country. The coastline, because it's the largest, the fourth largest island in the world, is 5,000 kilometers. Think about that distance is like leaving London, going all the way to Dubai. But that's the shoreline of this amazing country. It's also vanilla country. They are the largest producers and exporters of vanilla. So if you like your cake with vanilla laced, just know you're having a piece of Madagascar. But the proverb, the person who sells eggs should not start a fight in the market. How would you interpret it?
He who has things to hide should not go for any war, because at the end of the day, whatever they're hiding most definitely will come out.
Where?
Okay.
Okay.
So
Swali.
So we kind of laid the ground, but let's just go over those just a little bit so that you can now help us through this very clear law.
Yeah.
All right? That we know that the law says that you can exhaust all avenues of appeal when it comes to something.
Yeah.
But that we're dealing with many things here. The question we asked about something that's impeachable and somebody's actually gone through the process and has actually been impeached. Should this person then be allowed to come back and run for public office? That's one. But then we're also seeing very many scenarios play out in the movement. One of them is this very public case of Albert Ojwang, whereby we're hearing that the orders to commit a crime were given from the very top. And this is one of the runners in this entire activity who has said this happened. Now, in cases like that, should the people along this trail actually say, you know what, let me then step aside and allow investigations to continue? This is all happening within the same vacuum whereby somebody has gone through a court case, has had charges preferred against them, has gone through trial, has been convicted, has been sentenced and fined, and has actually served time in prison, can come back and be cleared by EACC, IEBC, everybody see, and then still come and run for an election and win and sit in parliament. Okay? That has happened in Kenya.
Yeah.
Justice Lynn Goge, which maybe set precedent in one way or another some years ago, in the two cases of former Governor Ferdinand Waitito and former Governor Mike Buvi Sonko, said, if we are investigating a certain thing, we ask you to step aside from office. The same thing was preferred upon George Natembe a couple of some months ago, where he was told, for the next 60 days, we don't need you here. Now, what does that mean? You take your office with you, you don't come to the physical premises, you don't continue doing your duties as... So you see how many things we're asking at the same time, Wakili. What is the actual status?
When I walked in, you were saying how the law is very clear.
Indeed.
I remember when I was doing my pupillage, my pupil master used to tell me that the law is very clear, but he cannot guarantee my eyesight. So it depends from which part of the law you're reading it. So that was he used to tell me that back in the day. May his soul rest in peace. So you asked very fundamental questions. Number one, let's just take even the Albert Ojwang case. As you rightfully say, there are names that are being thrown left, right, and center as to possible people that had a say or had played a role in this case. Now, the reason why we came up with the issue of stepping aside, why it works most of the time, for example, in corruption cases, you see, if you are found to have any corruption case, if you're a CS or a PS or supply chain manager, procurement, you step aside so as not interfere with investigations. So while you're out there, you're barred from actually getting in touch with witnesses, or because if you're in office and you're being investigated, we are human beings. You will cover your tracks.
Yes.
We have to be honest. Now, if we were in a functional democracy, a country governed properly by law, because yes, you're governed by law, but now it depends on which side of the law you are. The names that have been mentioned in the Albert Ojwang case should have already stepped aside, because you have to clear your name. That's an allegation. Whether it's true or not, you first clear your name, then come back to office. If at all, you have to come back to office. We saw scenarios where during Kibaki's tenure, where CSs were stepped aside, Kina Mwiraria, Murungaru. If you are unable to clear your name, then you never come back. Those who came back apparently cleared their names. We don't know if at all they really cleared them. So that is the essence of the law, because the law must be fair to each and every person, all and sundry. But we have a scenario where there are those animals that are more equal than others. So I do believe that the names mentioned must step aside, because we will not solve that case if the same people are still in office. That means someone is taking the fall. And then this raises the questions, because we were asking ourselves the other day as advocates, where all this footage is coming from? Because it seems now like someone is going to take the fall. Because all of a sudden there's so much evidence. Now there are footages from, now there are many explanations. But at the end of the day, all these things just can't happen without authorization or a plan. So someone must be the mastermind. So even if those who are incarcerated or facing charges are found guilty, who sent them is the question that lingers in our heads as Kenyans, because we need to understand who benefits with Albert Ojwang dead. That is the question. Or injured, or maimed, or hurt. You see, that is what we need to answer. If we answer that question, then we'll find the person culpable of his death. Now, the matter is impeachment.
Sorry, before you go to that, essentially what you're saying is the reasoning behind saying step aside is because by the fact that I'm there, first of all, I hold a position of authority already, and that there's a certain kind of severance that folks will pay to me. So me being there, the likelihood that people will adjudicate freely and fairly, then that space is constricted. Okay. So this is why we are saying sit over here so that we can.
Because we have to prevent interference, witness interference, investigation interference. That is how the law works, because we can't have a scenario where some step aside. If today you'd see a corruption case, like you gave the issue about Natembea, he was told not to access his office for a period of time. Why? Because they wanted to get some piece of evidence or information. Now, if a governor could do that, now the allegations against the current DIG, Lagat, those are just allegations. They are not proved, right? So if we were in a functional country, then of course he should have stepped aside. We heard there was a rumor that he had resigned. There was a rumor that he had stepped aside, but we later found out he had gone on leave. So those are the questions that linger around Kenyans, because he also has to clear his name. Because if he doesn't, that is something he lives with for the rest of his life. Now, if I were him, of course, I'd want my name cleared. But again, we live in a country where we have yet to breathe life into Chapter 6 of the Constitution. That is leadership and integrity. Because like I rightfully say, if we were a functionable country governed truly by the rule of law, and not when we want the law to govern us, we'll do things differently.
I mean, Wakili, when you talk about prosecution, or rather how a layman out here, someone who's just following the proceedings, there are many questions that arise. Where then is the gentleman was picked up in Homa Bay, taken to that police station in Homa Bay, then transported all the way to Nairobi. The individuals who picked this man are from home. They brought him to Nairobi. Part and parcel of investigations has to go back all the way to Homa Bay, right? But then again, you get to Nairobi and CCTV footage all of a sudden was deleted, It was deleted. Information that you get immediately after that is now not corroborating the CCTV evidence there is. But even the police officers who are there, because we also understand that police officers operate from command given from their seniors, right? And you have a junior officer telling you, I was told by my senior that his senior said we do A, B, C, D. And all this information is out here, yet that part of stepping aside to allow investigations, still remains just being a suggestion other than a requirement. Why is there lack of adhering to this requirement that is not a suggestion?
Again, it has to stem from the fact that of how we run our country. You see, I always say that most of these institutions are not independent. And that is the truth of the matter, because you will find there's either political influence or there's just some influence from somewhere. Now, you have a scenario where we had a very good constitution that we passed and we were happy about, but we never really solved something called police reforms. You know, we just changed the name from force to service, and we said, boss, this thing is clean.
Change uniform.
Yeah, and change uniform a couple of times. Now they're back to another one. Now we don't even another president comes will decide people to wear green or black. You know, so at the end of the day, that's all the things we change.
Yeah.
So what is interesting is that we have to change. We have to do a lot of reforms in the police sector because, one, we need to understand the training they go through. What happens in Kiganjo? Because it's like they're trained to hate the people they're supposed to protect. They say utumishi kwa wote, but if you look at their training, is like protect the crown, the old ordinance back in the day. That is the training they have. Because if you look at, for example, even when people have this picketing and demonstrations, by and large they are peaceful until a tear gas canister is low. And there are some cops who still believe there's an offense called illegal assembly. You ask them, what is that? In this day and age, they do not understand that. So we need to do a lot of, one, civic education to those police officers that actually work for us. That is very true. Number two, a lot of reforms are needed in the police service to actually make it a service, not just a force.
Yeah.
And to say that we actually never made it a service, to date, we still hear horrific stories of we still have torture chambers.
Yeah.
We thought they ended with the new constitution. But those who are abducted, they tell you they were taken to an alley somewhere in a basement. Some were tortured. Some were taken to dams. You know, the things you hear, it's like a Rambo movie. And that tells you that we really never changed. It was just some cosmetic change, you know. So unless we do that, we will never progress. And that service will never become utumishi kwa wote. It will be utumishi kwa the crown. Those who are in power are the ones who are actually served. And the worst thing is that, like you rightfully say, the junior officers always get the fall because orders from above can't be proved. How do you prove me orders from above? There's no letter. There's no phone call. You didn't record it.
You didn't record a phone call. There's no SMS.
Yes.
Okay.
It's as simple as we meet where fanya hivi. And you know now they have to respect the crown. So,
because the person dealing with the matter is the junior officer.
Because if you don't do what that order is saying, you'll find yourself in Lokichogio, Turkana tomorrow. You'll be sent somewhere else, and that is a sad reality. So those are the punishments they get. Like for example, the OCS that was arraigned in court, the Langata OCS that actually released these protesters, was transferred to a remote area because of that. While he has power to do the same, if he sees this arrest, this is nonsensical. Just let these guys go. So those are the things we need to look into. Until we do that, we will just remain here, lamenting.
The similar thread runs with impeachments.
Yes.
I think that I know that we know that there have been a number of impeachments in the country, and a number of those are still imagining that they could run for public office. Now, there's what the Constitution says, and then there's what public opinion is. Can you then clarify between the two, whether it be an opinion or a statement of law, in terms of what you can or cannot do?
Well, you see, in law, there's something we call the doctrine of exhaustion. You can have a matter decided by a judge, let's say the magistrate court, and you feel that you're still aggrieved. And that is why you see sometimes when people appeal, judgments are set aside because you see that it was found that either the judge or magistrate erred in fact and in law. Because they're also human beings, and because it's also persuasion, how you persuade the court through your submissions and documents. So you can feel that, hey, this decision is unfair. So when you appeal, sometimes all the time, people get a favorable judgment after an appeal. So what we have in Kenya, we have one problem. By and large, impeachment processes are political.
Yeah.
So you find someone might have some serious political aspirations and is seen as a threat. You see, and so they decide to stop this threat, they bring a motion for impeachment. And once you get that on you, you're as good as gone. So now you have to and we have had allegations that sometimes even senators receive packages. That is an allegation that we have to substantiate one day. If it's true, then that is very sad. So you have a scenario where people are removed from office through a political process. So, let's take for example, regarding Gachagua. You see, when they were doing the impeachment, I told a friend of mine who was actually handling the impeachment case for Senate, I told him, the mistake you guys have done is that you have denied him audience. And he'll go to court and claim the process was flawed. And that's what he's doing. In that, he said, I was sick. They still had 2 more days for the process. He just requested that give me another date to come back from hospital and address those issues. Now, when you decide to judge someone without them being there and hearing what he's saying, how is that process legally sound or fair? It's not. So those are the challenges we have with this impeachment process. Now, the issue about exhaustion, the truth of the matter is that up until, you're innocent until proved guilty. Now, when the last nail is put on your coffin, that is when you're as good as gone. And and a good example is Mike Sonko. Sonko chased he took his case so fast to the Supreme Court until they put the final nail and they're like, you know what, you're done. So he's out. If you look at Gachagua, for example, and I commend his advocates, his case is yet to really take off because he's had so many applications. And that's a legal tactic which we commend the advocates. They know what they're doing. Because the more time they buy, the more they get to the Court of Appeal, they move to the Supreme Court. So he's looking for a way he can actually vie. Now, up until we have exhausted those legal mechanisms, then, as she rightfully says, they are allowed to vie. But now, is it morally sound is the question.
That's the question.
Because I want us to take a quick breathe. Woo! Because you've just said something and Dennis doesn't like it. So we'll figure that out when we come back from this break because we're asking the question. So Wakili has just dropped the bombshell and said, until that happens, guess what? They're allowed to vie. Okay, we'll come back. We'll talk about it.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
That then sit with agencies that clear an individual that they are ready or they can vie for office. Because one would argue that even if you have appealed, right, the original judgment still remains. It is until that time after the hearing has happened that the judge then makes a decision to either find you innocent or not. But the guilty verdict still remains. That's how Kenyans are thinking. Correct us if we are wrong.
Well, that is the moral aspect I was speaking to before. You see, there are 2 things. One, you've given 2 different examples. One, that you served a jail term, then came out. Then there's this impeachment that now means that you cannot... but then impeachment means you're permanently done. it means you're gone. You and politics, you've retired. Do you think
Parliament enjoys quasi-judicial powers?
Yes.
Okay.
So we tell you that, you are goodbye. You are done. I
See you
hear people
later.
say 10 years. I don't know who said they have to come back after 10 years, but it's permanent. So the reason why we have courts is because, like I rightfully told you, this thing is by and large political. It's a political process. So as to prevent a scenario where people can have a witch hunt against you and put some impeachment on you and then just make sure you go home to destroy your political career, which sometimes, that thing, you don't need to have some serious legal evidence when that process in Parliament. It's just, it's really not, the evidence threshold is not that serious. So if someone comes up with some, like the things we're saying about Gachagua, and they couldn't prove those things, but just to whip emotions to vote. And we also know scenarios that our members of Parliament and Senate, there are allegations that they're actually panel beaten to certain decisions. So if people are already given a way forward on how to vote, on bills, for example, remember the finance bill, people died. They voted, then when the president said, you know what, I won't sign this, then they clapped. People are already dead, the sad reality. So to prevent an unfair process, that is why the courts are there. So the court will actually see whether it can actually invalidate the impeachment ruling, or to just leave it as it is. So it actually, more or less, the court just checks the process.
Okay.
So is the process sound? If it wasn't sound, then the court will say, you know what, this process was not sound. If, for example, the threshold for signatures, let's say, for example, for the members of court assembly, if that was not met, then of course that impeachment process is flawed. There's one that, the first one brought against her name, what is her name? Kawira
Kawira Mwangaza.
did not meet the threshold for signatures for the MCAs. That one died a natural death. Until now, they caught up with her. They found a way out, So we have to protect everyone's rights. But now that doesn't mean that if you're found culpable, that now we also support that. The only reason we have this doctrine of exhaustion is that so that you can actually rest. Without you having to have those questions that linger in your head. So you are given room to go to court, argue your case out, and if the court decides they will not invalidate the ruling, the impeachment ruling, then you go home.
Am I hearing you then speak in terms of the morality question for Kenyans in terms of individuals that find themselves in this public office does not exist? We've never really had a conversation in terms of this is the moral standard that we hold ourselves as a country where you have a matter. You ought not to be anywhere within leadership circles.
Now, you see, we really can't have that conversation with Kenyans, if we're to be honest, because we are the same people that are given 500 shillings to attend a rally. We are the same people that when someone comes to campaign, umetuacha aje. So you cannot now you cannot be too clean when now it wants to favor. I keep telling people this. You cannot receive bribes during campaigns and then expect when someone goes to parliament to move anti-corruption bills. How?
They gave you 500.
They will never. They have to recoup their money. So we have to change our software. That is the problem we have. Because, we can't look at the impeached people and say, these guys are crooks. But who elected them? We did. Who attended the rallies? We did. Who wore the t-shirts and the capes? We did. Who actually subscribed to their manifesto? We did. So up until we say, that's why I'm saying that chapter 6 has yet to come to life. If we bring it to life, us as Kenyans, and say, there is a standard we have for leadership in this country. If you fall beneath that, do other things. Enda fanya kazi ingine. Leadership entails chapter 6. The day we do that, then we can now look at these leaders and say, this one is a crook, this one is this and that. But up until then, because that same person you call a crook, when they call for a rally, the same Kenyans will run there, and after he's given a packet of flour or something, these days I see people are getting 5,000.
No, lollipops.
And guys are also getting gas canisters and also getting boats.
Yeah.
That's a form of bribe. Let's call it what it is. Although they decided to vote correctly, but at the end of the day, they received. So your software still has a problem. It's as simple as saying, "Apana tutaki kitu." What do you have for us as a people? Let me ask you a question. We've seen so many by-elections in the recent past.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you what those individuals who got elected stand for, can you tell me? You can't.
Can they tell us?
No, all I'm saying is, have you had anything? Let's take the recent one, the recent by-election.
Yeah.
The best thing we know about Kamongo, were the beautiful songs that were being sung by the people. And the act of defiance by the people of all Kalau. Now, if he will work for them is a different question. I cannot judge him. He's yet to work. But we have to interrogate what you stand for. Because if you don't stand for anything, they say, you fall for
everything.
And everything at the end of the day. So those are the questions we need to ask ourselves first before we go to any election.
Yeah.
We have time between now. It's actually 1 year between now and the next election. Which are the type of leaders we want? Or what does, let's say I want to have a member of parliament. This member of parliament, what do I want this member of parliament to do for me? Or if I was to mold someone as a president, what attributes would I give to this person? It will be easier for you to vote. But up until then, we will be electing these impeachable people, more crooks, more frauds. They will always run for because they have the money. They have the money to transverse the country. They have the money to bribe the way around it. And that's why I keep telling people that 500 bob, you can't eat it for 5 years. That means you'll be eating 100 bob a year.
So now there's nothing to hope, because here we are saying that if it was left to the law and these things then be able to carry force, and you say, okay, well, there's Kagai and he's running for governor and he has been, because really, what are you going to do? You're going to stop the guy from running? The EACC and the IBC have proven to us time and time again that you can actually approve questionable characters to go and vie for politicals, because so you can't really depend on them. So this would go back to the court. Somebody would be, maybe a private petitioner would go to court and say, no, Kagai is running and he shouldn't be. But that process takes very long.
Yes.
But what you're saying is that it is not the brick and mortar that's the problem, that it is the software. How do you reset the software? Is it people who, in the minds of people, say, well, actually, you know what, I was impeached, so I really shouldn't run. How many people will do that? Because there's not the same thing that we are depending on for, again, I go back to the UK example of Steimer of Starmer
Starmer.
saying, okay, I received, can you imagine? I received gifts and they were in excess of what I should have received, albeit that he reported himself late, and that's what caused the whole hullabaloo. But he's, on that alone, said, I'm going to step aside just because of that. And we are even saying just because of that, because we have lowered the threshold for integrity so low that
Yeah.
it sounds like, how can somebody
How?
step aside because they received gifts? Are you
Yeah.
kidding? People have killed others and they're still in office, allegedly. So how do you reset that software?
It starts from us. You know, like I said, we have to love our country,
Yeah.
first and foremost. And we have, like you rightfully say, see, for Starmer to actually decide to step aside, or for Boris Johnson during the COVID
Yeah.
pandemic, he went for a
was
party.
outside.
yeah.
You see, for that to happen, it means that there's a certain threshold they have for that seat or for leadership. That if you fall beneath that, then that means you can no longer serve in that office. Now, we have not set any threshold for these offices. We celebrate, actually, we celebrate those who are charged in court. It's very easy for someone to have a corruption case. The moment they have that case, they'll say, we are being targeted as a community. That person will be on the ballot and be elected. Sad reality. Anatuibia anatuletea sisi. Once you say that, you're the problem. What do you mean anakuibia anatuletea? You know? Ni mwizi wetu. That tells you...
Tuache na mwizi wetu,
Hey, tuache
yeah.
na mwizi wetu. At least we anaiba na analeta. Hey, if you put it that way, then we are lost as a country. You know? So it starts from us. And I keep saying, before we point at those leaders, you look at yourself in the mirror. Because the problem we have is, yes, the issue of poverty in this country is crazy. Unemployment is crazy. And that's why you have young men being misused these days. I don't like calling them goons. Being misused these days to actually pursue political agendas or to help certain politicians. And that is why we keep saying, instead of Singapore, we are now in Haiti because these young men are being misused. Now, these political leaders, they take advantage of this poverty that we have in this country. That is why there are people, when you give that 500 shillings, it has assisted them in ways we cannot explain. So we have to be it civic education, be it, I don't know what we have to do, but at the end of the day, citizens have to understand that leaders are meant to work for you. Have to understand that you do not need to sell your vote for you to actually get a good leader. And I will usually say this because we've all gone to school. Let's say a large percentage of this country has gone to school. Whenever you're doing an exam, when there's a question you've been asked, you have the right answer, right? So that means you always know between right and wrong. Whenever you're inputting your M-Pesa pin, you put the right pin, right?
Yeah.
That means we know the difference between right and wrong. So why do we go wrong when we're electing people? If that old shosho in the village can put her right pin kwa M-Pesa, why do we vote for the wrong people? It goes back to us. It is the way we have grown up. It is what we have seen. Then that means you need to have a reset. I thought we'll have a reset after the Gen Z revolution, but we've gone back to our tribal cocoons, number one. We've gone back celebrating the same people that we actually had an issue with. So it's upon us to actually want a better country, not just for us, but for those who come after us. Because for those who believe that all my problems can be solved in one day by meeting a political leader, that also stems the problem. Because they believe nikipatana ule jamaa leo shida yangu yote imeisha. So yako ikiisha yawa.
Yeah.
And that is why there are those who can actually take up arms and fight for political leaders, because they believe huyu ni mtu nikimpigia na shika, huyu ni mtu wangu anaweza nichunga. Sasa wewe kama anakusaidia na mimi. So that tells you we are selfish again. So we have to ask ourselves, we have to be patriotic. That means selflessness. So those are the things we need to work around. Up until then, we'll just be here, you know.
Do you think Kenyans have made the connection with what is happening, where poverty has been weaponized as a political tool in a negative way, where we know very well we want to go to Singapore, right? For us to go to Singapore, manufacturing has to be a reality. For manufacturing to happen, there has to be a proper taxation regime that is predictable. For that to happen, members of parliament must be in the house to legislate to these things. For these members of parliament to sit there, first of all, they must be worth their mettle and be able to even talk about bills and the pros and cons for them. Have Kenyans met the connection as to why you'll be given 500 bob? Because they're saying If I open up businesses, people get jobs. I will have no one whenever I just show up for a rally. You know. So what do? I might as well leave you being poor so that I have already decided masses that are available to me whenever I need. Have we met that connection?
We haven't. And that tactic you just referenced is called impoverish them to use them. Make sure they are so poor that they will always depend on you. So you want to be the only rich man in the village, the only one with a hacienda in the village. Everybody else has a shanty. So they look at you like a demigod. They want to be worshipped, you know. And that is a problem we have. You asked a very pertinent question about calling for rallies and whatnot. You know, we always argue and we wonder how come we can't solve unemployment in this country. Of course, you can't solve the entire unemployment. But since we are a country that copies a lot from the West, why can't we also copy something they've done? We have very young men and women who are actually good in skills, in talents.
True.
Now, most guys are brought there, either artists, they are footballers, basketballers, rugby players. But here we have decided not to commercialize our sports. And it stems from the fact that most of these federations have corruption allegations, mismanagement allegations. They have issues as to the substance of those who are running these federations. Now, if we had a government that had a goodwill, then those people who are found culpable in these federations, they'll be charged. We clean up these federations, make sure we commercialize this sport sector so that we have sponsors coming. Because you can't explain to me why you have a country like, let's say, South Africa. It has for example, football is well sponsored. Why? Because they believe if someone believes that if I put money in here, and as much as I'm sponsoring a team, I'll also gain. All right, that's how sponsorship works at the end of the day. So you find a situation where, if, for example, the president wakes up and stops forcing us to go to affordable housing to build houses, that is not the only job we can do as Kenyans. And realize that we can actually commercialize sports, arts. Most of our artists live song to song. Release a song, it becomes a hit. After that, they go broke. Stop the issue of piracy. Those are the things we need to do, but you know they can never do that.
So that's the environment that we talk about that is conducive.
They can never do, because if all of you now are able to meet to fend for yourself, that means when they want to call for a useless rally to say nonsense, nobody will show up. And ordinarily they wouldn't want that, because they also feel that once you're also empowered economically,
occupied,
and you're empowered economically, you'll be independent minded. You will know whatever someone telling you, whether this is a lie or this is truth, you know. So they wouldn't want that. So impoverish them to use them. Sad reality. So they will use you, they'll seduce you, misuse and abuse you. But up until we have someone who can actually, I believe we need to commercialize our sports. We need to work on our arts. We have so many young people who know who are passionate about film, are passionate about artistry, but we really have a ministry that I don't know what it does. Sad reality, because the worst ministry in this country, that if you look at whoever ends up at the CS for sports, youth, and it all, they do not. I think it's seen as a demotion if you're taken there. There was a time Amina was sent there. Now we have Vuria there. We have a young man who's a PS there who has some other allegations. It's a ministry that either it's underfunded, or it's seen as just a ministry for the sake of telling the young people that you have a ministry. I talked to a friend of mine who told me that this NYC, National Youth Council, is given 90 million a year. What can they do with 90 million? What? I don't know if it's true, but that's what he told me. He works there. So it tells you where they've placed the young people in this country. And that is why when political parties are formed, for example, you see, when they have a NEC meeting, they'll choose those who they believe can be in the NEC. But when they want to popularize the party, if we wear T-shirts, the young people who are supposed to be on cars, who are supposed to be on the lorry, on cars. I am yet to see a political party that wants to help the young people. And I've seen Lina Mwananchi now they're bound to come up with a political party. And by and large, they're young people. I hope and pray that we will actually give the young people a space to grow. And more so, we can actually, again, I go to the fact that we like copying. We can actually copy from our brothers in South Africa. If you look at, for example, the political parties in South Africa, they mentor young leaders. Look at EFF, for example. The people who have come from EFF, even the ANC that is actually seen as a bad party, it is the ANC that actually made someone like Malema. It
Yes.
actually brought Malema.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
It brought Floyd Shivambu. And Dr. Nlozi. They all came from the Youth League. But our Youth League, by and large, the youth leagues we have in this country, I don't know what they produce. It's just one person out of a pool of 1 million people. So I think we really don't have the goodwill to assist the young people in this country. And I hope that changes. And as we gear towards the political season, my clarion call to the young people is that don't allow yourself to be used. Understand that politics is a game of interest. Someone tells you, I want to become an MCA. That's your dream. So what do I gain by that dream that you have? What is this you believe that once you're MCA will impact my life positively? Because that is how voting is done. So you want to be my president, very well. So let us discuss number one. We have something called, there's someone who says we have odious debt. What is your take on the same? If this debt is actually odious, will you pay it? Now, if he tells you yes or no, you start grading. By the time you're done with that person, you already know whether this person is a failure or someone who actually passes. Those are the things we need to, that is how we move forward as a country. Because if we still go on euphoria, on razzmatazz, hey, this party has lovely colors, this party has good cars. If we still go on
beautiful songs.
Beautiful songs. If we still go on slogans, we would be lost. It's good to have the slogans, the razzmatazz and everything, but the substance. What is this party formed on? What is the political ideology of whoever is spearheading this political party? If the political ideology is, I have to amass wealth, we are lost. We are as good as done. Because they will amass wealth at your expense.
Yeah. And as I look at all of these things, they're all connected, whether we like it or not, because then it graduates.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that whereby you think that you can give somebody 500 shillings at a rally and that they've bought the vote. It's the same idea that then cements somebody in an office whereby all the lights are flashing that, my friend, you shouldn't be there, but you're going to hold on to the thing as though your life depended on it. I guess in this case, it kind of does. But it's the same thing that runs similar through all of this. And what we're being met with at the current time and place. But then it also leaves a very bitter taste in my mouth. Because essentially what we're saying, Wakili, is that we probably see a situation. I mean, I'm sorry, and I don't want to preempt anything, but we're seeing a situation where justice then will be denied and not served. We're seeing a situation where people will then be able to override the law, and that the Constitution, as Dennis often says, just remains a suggestion. That the law is just something that somebody decides that they can say, and then people will look at it and say, oh, okay, it's Thursday. No, I'm not going to be listening to the law today, kind of thing, you know? So how it just leaves us in a conflicted space. Are we being overly unoptimistic when we see the things in broad daylight before us, that we can already know what is going to be said in an Albert Ojwang case, for example, or that we can already presuppose that people will not show up for court summons? Are we being unoptimistic or being negative in our thought, or should we hope for better?
I think Kenyans are disillusioned and they have found themselves, as you rightfully say, the issue of having the negative aspect to most of these things because they believe the leaders will always have their way. And by and large, most of these things will just be under the carpet. And that tells you that we have really not gotten to a point of saying enough is enough. Things are not being done properly. Because you have to get tired as a citizenry so that you understand that, you can see this thing is wrong and the outcome will not be the right outcome. And also that stems from the fact that we also have problems in the judiciary. We also have to be honest, because that is where the advocates we work. There's a boycott ongoing that was yesterday. That tells you we also have a problem there because there are those also who fail to implement the Constitution. There are those who have allegations as to impropriety, allegations as to selling and buying of judgments. Now, if that is the case, then away from the leadership, it goes to the judiciary, then it goes to legislation making. Then we are good. The three arms of government, that means we are all done. So I believe a cleanup is needed. It is needed, and it starts from who you elect as leaders, because they will either decide to fully implement the law. You said something. She said something about the Constitution that you say just as a suggestion. I keep saying that we have really not implemented the Constitution fully. We haven't, because even devolution isn't felt really because you see there are aspects of devolution that have been devolved, but are still held by
the national
government. Explain to me why you have this Ministry of Health here. What is it doing? It's just meant for policy, but a huge chunk of the funds are in the ministry. Now they'll tell you the governments, the county governors are corrupt. Do something about it. Yeah. But you can't, because the corruption is systemic. It's from the top down.
They really don't want you to do something about it.
Yeah. Exactly. So you see, what gives these governors a sense of safety? It's like, inafanyika kila mali. Si tufanye wote.
Basi tuko na share.
Hata si sad reality. So we devolved corruption instead of services.
Wow. Nuruddin Kagai is an advocate, and he's laying it plain. This is the way it is. Now we know what the law says, but this is a software issue.
It is.
Fix the software. The hardware is going to remain where it is. Fix the software. All right. So it continues in conversations that we'll have. Thank you for being here with us this morning to go into some of these things. We raise insights. We have conversations necessary for us to do. Asante Sana. Good morning. 9 a.m.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your